morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for hearing House Bill 16. What House Bill 16 would do is close a hole that creates a circumstance that has a disparate impact on any number of Virginians for inappropriate reasons. Timothy Mosley is probably well known to some members of this committee, but perhaps not by the name Timothy Mosley, instead by the name Timbaland. And Timbaland was recently announced as a new inductee into the American Songwriters Hall of Fame. And I've been blessed with the opportunity to spend a little bit of time in this body, and I know that sometimes we do center aisle presentations. I have it on good authority that Timothy Mosley has a private security detail that he uses, some of whom have concealed handgun permits. Were Timothy Mosley, aka Timbaland, to be honored by the General Assembly of Virginia for his remarkable achievement as a songwriter, he would have to either instruct his private security detail to break the law or not enter the Capitol grounds. The disparate impact of denying concealed carry permit rights within Capitol Square is the sort of impact that comes with piled legal and criminal offenses that have historically had disproportionate impacts on the most vulnerable communities among us. This sort of thing is the sort of thing that we would expect to see becoming less frequent as we move into the 21st century, but instead, by virtue of laws such as the prohibition of legal concealed carry permit holders exercising their God-given right to self-defense here on Capitol Square, it's becoming more prevalent. So in fact, the same people that purport to care about those who are most vulnerable among us vote repeatedly for laws that will have disparate impacts documented over the course not of decades, but of centuries on those very same people that they purport to support. The RAND Corporation, as recently as 2023, points out that it would be indicative of data research since 1990, that gun-free zones actually appear to increase the incidence of gun violence. Don't want us to take the RAND Corporation numbers? Let's take an organization that might not have the same political bent. Harvard University, as recently as 2019, says that there is no conclusive, and I'm quoting, evidence that gun-free zones have any impact on the incidence of gun violence. But what we do know by statistical and empirical data is that since the 1990 Gun-Free School Zones Act was enacted, the number of school shootings has increased not one-fold, not two-fold, not threefold, but exponentially. So you have a subset of people who've self-identified as willing to appear before the authorities and submit to the laws of the Commonwealth to get themselves registered as a concealed carry permit holder that numbers well over 700,000 from every district represented by a member of on this dais. And they're asked to check their rights at Capitol Square. This bill wouldn't allow firearms wantonly on Capitol Square. It wouldn't allow for the gatherings that we've seen sometimes in the past. What it would do is allow people who have submitted to the Commonwealth for a background check and registered and paid a fee and conformed with training requirements to carry and exercise their right to self-defense here on Capitol Square. And it strikes me that if the responsibility of government is indeed to defend freedom, it's ironic that we should restrict it more greatly where we sit to defend the very freedom of the people that we represent. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Delegate Garrett. I don't see any requests to speak here from members of the committee, so I'm going to go ahead and go straight. Again, that doesn't mean you can't later, but let's go ahead and go into the members of the public. Those in favor of House Bill 16, if you'll approach, identify yourselves, and we'll limit you guys to a minute as well, because we may have another bill, depending on whether the patron shows up or not. So, Delegate Van Cleve, Mr. Van Cleve.
Mr. Chairman, Philip Van Cleve, VCDL. Yeah, we strongly support the bill. Concealed handgun permit holders, the state police can track revocations, and revocations for any reason have always been way under 1%, and those don't necessarily include for a crime. There can be non-criminal things. Permits, there's all like 20 different things can disqualify you. So these people are safe. They've done what they're supposed to do. I carried here for 22 years without any incidents in this building at all, or on Capitol Square. So thank you. Please support this.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Patricia Webb, Virginia Citizens Defense League, also a licensed firearm dealer. I would like to point out that a lot of you have concealed handgun permits, a lot of your aides and your staff also have concealed handgun permits. These are people that you know and trust. These are people that work late with you and have to walk back to the parking garage after dark on dangerous streets. We know there's crime in the city. We know that supposed gun-free zones are a favorite target of violent criminals. We're asking you to take that into consideration and please vote favorably on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Webb. One more, it looks like, here in the room.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, committee. I'm Taylor McKee. I'm with the National Rifle Association, and we oppose this bill. In Heller and Bruin, there were enumerated places that the court upheld could restrict or prohibit guns. The main theme there was that the government took that burden on fully via metal detectors and heavily armed security. Outside on the streets, that doesn't seem to be the case. The egress and exit or entrance and egress are not controlled so strictly. So for those reasons, we oppose those bills, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we have one person online to speak in favor of the bill, and that is David Adams. Mr. Adams, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. David Adams, Virginia Shooting Sports Association, the state affiliate of the NRA. We strongly support this bill and thank the patron for bringing it forward.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. All right, we have a number of people in the queue online, but let's go ahead and get the folks in the room. And again, if we can keep this relatively brief, we are moving along at a great pace. You guys are doing a great job so far. Let's keep it up.
Good morning. Excuse me. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Lori Haas. I just want to point out a few things. We have zero data from the Virginia State Police with regard to how law-abiding concealed permit holders are or are not. They do not collect data on whether a person who's been charged or convicted of a crime did or did not have a concealed handgun permit. So while I believe that the majority are in fact law-abiding, we have no data that shares or that we can rely on to prove that. Number two, this building is not a gun-free zone. Virginia Tech was not a gun-free zone. Schools have school resource offices. This building has the Capitol Police. We all feel safer when we have trained law enforcement available. Law enforcement trains for hundreds and hundreds of hours. They maintain their training, and yet in a live fire situation, some of the estimates are that they only hit their target about 20 to 25% of the time. The training for concealed handgun permit holders in the Commonwealth is a 1-hour in-person class sitting at a table.
Thank you.
Thank you. We oppose the bill.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Andrew Goddard, Virginia Center for Public Safety. We oppose the bill for all those reasons, and I won't invoke God in my response because I believe God said, "Thou shalt not kill."
Thank you, Mr. Goddard.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Jessica Anderson. I am a constituent of District 71, and I oppose this bill. And just a slight reference, the gun ownership or circulation of guns has fivefold since 1990 to current date. And we can also talk about the fact that, again, I think Ms. Haas touched on this, we have many locations that have suffered gun violence despite having access and allowability for guns on the property. Thank you. I oppose this bill.
Thank you. All right, online we have a number of people. Again, if you guys could keep it brief, and you guys have been doing a great job of that to this point. We've got first Martina Lines.
Thank you again, Speaker. On behalf of the Brady chapters in Virginia, we support this bill. We have been coming to Richmond and to the Capitol for more than 20 years on Martin Luther King Day. And I have to say, I can't even count the number of times that I have had individuals who were armed attempt to intimidate me. Having the ability to ask advocates to come to the Capitol and not having to worry that they will experience that same threat is great, and I appreciate the fact that the bill exists. Thank you.
Thank you. Miss Elizabeth Paul. Elizabeth Paul, yep.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Elizabeth Paul. I'm a student at the University of Virginia, and I'm here today with Brady's Team Enough. We oppose HB 16. HB 16 would put Virginians at risk as they exercise their right to visit democratic spaces. I remember having to cancel a trip to Richmond out of caution in January 2020, thanks to armed militia members rallying near the Capitol. Weapons do not belong at our Capitol. Both the public and elected officials are at risk if firearms are able to enter sensitive spaces where debate and conflict are expected to be present. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Rivka Vizcardo-Leiter. Is Rivka online? All right, we'll go to Andy Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Andy Parker from Henry County, and I'm the father of Allison Parker, who was murdered on live television 8 years ago. 7 years ago, I got into a crowded elevator at the General Assembly building on lobby day with a bunch of 2A guys carrying. It was before the law was rightfully banned. And this one little punk started trying to harass me, pointedly showing me the Glock he had concealed. He thought he could intimidate me, but he was wrong. And that's all these people want to do. They don't care about public safety. They just want to intimidate to make up for their shortcomings. We can't go backwards and allow Delegate Garrett's friends to play tough guy. This bill deserves to die right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Next up, we have Christine Payne.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. The Capitol grounds are the people's grounds, and all of the people deserve to feel safe and free from intimidation when they are at our Capitol and visiting their legislators. Therefore, I oppose the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Virginia Rovnak.
Thank you.
Dr. Rovnak.
I live in Crozet. I'm a member of the Charlottesville Coalition for Gun Violence Prevention. I oppose this bill. Mass killings seem to be almost always by someone holding a grudge who's angry about something. I can't believe that all these 800,000, if that's the number, of people with Virginia concealed gun permits are so emotionally stable and not ever going to be angry. I don't trust them, and I want to feel free when I come and lobby at the General Assembly. So I oppose this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rovnak. Next is Jackie Bielhart.
Hi, I'm with Virginia Moms for Change, a gun violence prevention group. My name is Jackie Bielhart. I'm from Chesterfield County. We oppose HB 16. We like to feel safe when we do our advocacy work at the Capitol. Thank you.
Oh, and I have also signed up Rishi Chandra, but I don't see Ms. Chandra on my screen. So that concludes the online testimony. I do notice that we have the gentleman from the NRA, you were trying to get my attention. So if you want to come up to the podium, if you've got more to say, we're happy to hear it. We want to make sure everybody gets a fair chance to be heard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. Just for the record, I wanted to correct myself. We support this bill. Apologies, patron. I misspoke earlier. Thank y'all for the opportunity to correct it. For the reasons I listed previously, we do support the bill. Thank you. My apologies, patron.
All right, thank you. All right, I've got a couple of people.
Yeah, Delegate Simon, the NRA member and myself canceled each other. I meant to oppose this bill, and I believe I incorrectly stated that I support it.
Got it. Understood. The context, what we got from context clues where you guys both were on this, but I appreciate your opportunity to clear up the record. All right.
Thank you. Coffee hasn't kicked in
Mr.
yet.
Chairman, I was pretty excited, so it all makes sense now.
All right, Delegate Helmer, you're first up in the queue.
Mr. Chair, speaking to the bill.
The delegate has the floor.
Mr. Chair, 4 years ago, as we sought to pass universal background checks, red flag laws, and other common sense measures supported by the vast majority of Virginians, a group of Parkland students wanted to come and demonstrate in favor of the common sense gun laws we were trying to put in place. But so many armed extremists descended on the Capitol in a prelude to what would be an attack, an insurrection in our U.S. Capitol a year later. that they, confronted with death threats, felt afraid to come and testify. We had to let them sleep in our offices just so they could get past the armed extremists standing in their way on the Capitol. Putting more guns, as this bill suggests, on Capitol Square is a way not of improving or increasing access to rights, but of a way of constraining the right to debate and free speech that we should enjoy and our citizens should enjoy here in Virginia. And I hope it is the will of this committee to vigorously oppose this bill that would increase threats to our democracy and prevent us from engaging in robust discussion of our efforts to keep our community safe here in Virginia. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Delegate Helmer. Delegate Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question for the patron.
Go ahead.
I just had a question.
Again, Mr., if you could direct it to the chair, and then if he hears it, we'll see if he wants to answer or not.
I would ask if the delegate could share when or if there was a time when a concealed carry holder that was not a public safety officer has prevented any acts of gun violence on the Capitol Square.
So, question, Delegate Garrett, go ahead.
Specifically on Capitol Square, I'm not aware of one. I will say, well, I'm not going to get into personal stories, but I don't know of one on Capitol Square. There have been a number in the thousands over the last couple of years of incidents of concealed carry permit holders stopping acts of violence and defending themselves and their families.
Thank you. Delegate McClure.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I'd like to ask if the patron could repeat the reference he made to the Harvard statistic.
Delegate Garrett.
So there's a 2019 Harvard study that states there's no conclusive evidence, that's the quote, that gun-free zones reduce gun crime.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a comment on that at the appropriate time for clarification.
All right, Delegate McClure, you have, let me see, let's go to Delegate Cousins first, and then we'll circle back and give you a chance to say something. Delegate Cousins.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I just would like to speak to the bill.
All right, go ahead.
Thank you. One of the stated intentions of the bill from the delegate was to somehow protect vulnerable communities, and we've heard this a lot over the last couple of days and today. I just want to point out, this conflation of criminal justice reform with allowing more weapons on the street is very disingenuous. If my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are concerned with criminal justice reform, which I'm glad to hear they are, I hope that will join us in addressing the mass incarceration of Black and brown communities in the Commonwealth, ensuring that people have access to economic opportunities by fully funding public education and creating good paying jobs, and also supporting efforts to reduce and study the impact of gun violence in our communities, of which we have a measure currently moving through the body.
Delegate McClure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The patron mentioned that study with Harvard, but didn't tell the entire story, mentioned that it was inconclusive, but the rest of that study actually says, and I quote from a professor over at Harvard, there's no way to know for sure about the impact because it's inconclusive because there's a lack of research on the topic and on guns and violence in general because of the congressional efforts to thwart the U.S. CDC from carrying out gun-related research. So I just wanted to offer that the rest of that piece of the study for clarification.
Thank you. All right, that is everybody I have in my queue. Is there any further conversation about the bill?
Mr. Chairman, may I briefly speak?
Absolutely give you the last word. I was just to make sure we didn't have everybody else on the committee that wanted to say anything. Delegate Garrett.
So the reason that people are incarcerated and we have instances of mass incarceration is because people violate laws. And when we put new laws on the books that people can be charged with and convicted of, they then become incarcerated for them. And so Gandhi and C.S. Lewis both rightly pointed out that man cannot be made good by law. We should respect individuals and trust each other and love our neighbors. This bill is a posturing bill that does nothing but create an additional charge for prosecutors to lay upon people who don't even know necessarily that they're in violation of this draconian law. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, committee operates on motion.
Mr. Chair, move to PBI.
Second. It's been moved and properly seconded to pass by the bill indefinitely. Delegate Garrett, that gives you another 2 minutes if you want it.
I'm good, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Delegate Garrett. Anybody else want to take 2 minutes? All right, if not, the clerk will open the roll. Members will cast their votes on the motion to pass by. The clerk will close the roll. Delegate Garrett, your bill is passed by indefinitely by a vote of 11 to 9. Thank you for your presentation this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee.